Okay, great. And then, so I'll send you the video. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Julianne, and I am the Associate Director of the Global Communications Center. I'll send you the video, like I mentioned. I'll also send you the slides. So if you don't want to watch the video, you can still have the slides and any corresponding materials you can have as well. So if you can, in the chat, if you can just type yes or hello, then I'll have a record of your names that I can use to send out the email. Okay, great, thank you. Perfect, thank you. Okay. So today I'm going to cover a lot of information about academic cover letters. They're really tricky. They cause people a lot of anxiety. And part of the problem is there are a lot of samples online and advice that is quite frankly is bad. And so people are getting a lot of mixed information. And so this workshop is to help you kind of navigate what you should do at different points in time and to help you weed through that, that advice that's going to start coming your way. So during today's workshop, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and interrupt me at any point in time, or you can type it into chat. Whatever works best for you is totally fine for me, but I really want you to feel like you can ask questions at any point in time. Obviously Zoom things, as you know, are very awkward. And so it's hard for me to tell if I'm going too fast or whatever. So you should definitely stop me at any point in time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then we will dive right in. So, nope. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this. And I'm going to do a quick poll here because I want to see the fields that you are all in and your familiarity with the academic job search process so I know how to adapt the workshop as we go along. Oh no, where's my, oh gosh. Okay, no, my poll is not there. So, so if you could, let's see, how can we do this? Okay, so if you click on Manage Participants, you will see options to click yes or no. If you have ever been on the academic job market, can you click yes? Okay, so one person. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear that. If you are in a humanities field, can you click yes? So a field that would be humanities, go ahead and select yes. Okay. Okay, no humanities people, that's good. I will blow right past those things. All right. Okay, good. On the job market currently. Perfect. So you will probably have definitely experienced some of the things we've talked about or that we're going to be talking about. And so feel free to ask any questions and say things that you have also noticed if you think it'll be helpful. That'd be great. Okay, let's do this. Okay. So as some of you probably know, the GCC provides free consulting on any of your communication projects. So you're writing your stuff for the academic job market, your cover letters, your research statements, diversity statements, things of that nature. You're working on your dissertation. We can help you with that. When you go, if you get an interview or a campus visit, you're preparing your dissertation defense, we can help you with those things as well. Sometimes it can be really helpful to get someone that is not your advisor giving you feedback because your advisor has a very kind of narrow focus. And so getting someone else's advice can really help you kind of see how someone else who would be evaluating your work on the job market might also look at the materials you're providing. So you can just go to our website to sign up for free appointments. So today I'm going to cover a lot. If I go too quickly, just let me know, but we're going to talk about the basic information you need to know for the academic job search, how you can tailor your materials, and then how to present a professional self as opposed to seeming like a student or like you're desperate. So we want to avoid that. Okay, so I did a survey of job ads from a variety of fields. Standard documents that you need to have at the ready are the cover letter, which is also called the statement of intent, and the CV. If you're planning on going on the market in the fall, these would be the two things that you should get working on right away if you have the emotional and mental bandwidth to handle it right now. Start chipping away at those two. Other typical documents are 3 letters of recommendation. Your committee should know you're going on the market, but it's also good just to put a bug in their ear, hey, I'm going to be going on the market. Can you have this ready? A research statement. Those are particularly asked for when it's a research fellowship or a job for an R1 university. Teaching philosophies, those are usually asked for if it's a liberal arts school, or if the teaching load is particularly high, or visiting assistant professor, then you're likely to be asked for a teaching philosophy. Additional documents, and this varied per field and job type, but you'll see like evidence of teaching effectiveness, and that can mean a range of different things depending on your field. A diversity statement, nobody knows what that should, all that should be, but we can certainly tell you what it should not be. So that's a weird document that they ask for, and it's an odd genre. And then you might have to submit a writing sample depending on your field. I can answer questions about all of these things if you have them at the end of the workshop, but our goal really is to tease out the cover letter. That is the most tricky of the documents to write. We have to engage in this like awkward self-promotion that feels very foreign to most people. Like, how do we strike the right balance of talking about how impressive we are without sounding like we're like egotistical maniacs? Okay, we want to try to avoid that. So how do we do this effectively? So let's look at how this document is read at different stages of the application process. So the typical stages are the initial application, the first interview, the campus visit, and then as the committee is deciding between different candidates. So in the initial phase, it's just the search committee reading, and they are reading to make a quick decision. They want to eliminate people out of that stack. They will look for the things that are instant no's. They want to say no at this stage. They will do a closer reading later on when they're trying to decide to narrow it down to the 10, 15 people they're actually going to interview. The first interview, still the search committee, and they're really going to be reading that the night before or a few minutes before the interview to come up with questions that they're going to ask you and to figure out how you would fit into the department. But they're really reading it to jog their memory. So you might be the 5th in a series of interviews they have that day. They are not going to remember your stuff all that closely. Like, they just are not going to remember. So it's really, they're skimming it really quickly, and you're hoping they see the most important things so that it really prompts them to ask you the right questions. In the campus visit, the audience is much larger. We have lots of people who are going to be looking at it to ask you questions about how you are going to fit into the department, and really kind of direct the where the department is going to go in the future. You'll also be meeting with some administrators, and they are not going to read your stuff until like right before you walk in the door. On one of my campus visits, the lady didn't even, she thought I was coming like hours later in the day. And someone plopped me down in her office, and she's like, oh, and spent 10 seconds, just she skimmed right over it and then asked me questions. So they are it's really what's going to pop off the page for them. And you're hoping it's like the key things. When we get to the deciding between candidates, the letter is used as a reference for people who are going to be using it to support different agendas. What they see as the future of this department, what kind of courses do they want to see offered, things like that. So the goal of this letter is to help people kind of see that you can really fit into the department and help them imagine those ways that you will be a good fit. So we want to highlight your achievements and clearly show how they are relevant to the job. You cannot talk about all your achievements, obviously. If you do, that letter is incomprehensible. It's a terrible list. But we really want to just highlight a few of those things so that we can direct the types of questions we will get asked. And then we can elaborate on all the other things. So let's look at what we should emphasize. When we're trying to figure out what to talk about, we need to look at that job ad. And the job ad is going to help us see what's the relationship between research and teaching, and are there any other topics you might need to address in that letter. So relationship between research and teaching, that's going to give you an indication how much time you should spend on each of those things. And then is there anything that's potentially strange that you need to add in there? So here is a job ad that I had actually applied to this job. What I'd like you to do is take a second to read this ad and see, do you think this is a research-focused job or a teaching-focused job? So when you've decided, go ahead and type it into the chat. We'll see what people think. Okay, so we are getting 100%. It's not everyone who's responded, but almost all of you have said research focused if you responded. Great, yes. Okay, absolutely. And they do care a little bit more about teaching than we would expect, and I can explain why. Having gone through the interview with this group of this university. So here's how we can tell this is research focused. You're all seeing the right things. They start with research and scholarship and talk about high quality publications. They are really concerned that someone is going to be able to get tenure. We also have a ton of information here about research and expertise. In my field, this 2 courses per semester is another indication that this is a research-focused job. Now, some fields don't use that type of language, but we have like 2-2, 3-3, or something like that. So this would indicate it's a research-heavy job. They do talk about teaching, and so they care about teaching. This was a job that was teaching at the main campus, but also a sister or commuter campus. And so they had much more concern about teaching than if it was just teaching at UConn's main campus. So because it had that regional component, they had that extra care about teaching. But even in the interview, I believe they only asked me 2 teaching questions, and everything else for a half hour was related to research. And then there was like 2 off the wall questions, which I can explain. So the weird things that you would have to make sure you mentioned in a cover letter here would be this aspect of diversity. So they really want that to come through. And of course they have the diversity statement listed, so it's clear they care about that. But there's so much time spent on it that would indicate it should definitely come up in the cover letter. Other things, so one of the weird questions they had asked me is how I felt about commuting. And I was not anticipating a question of that nature. And I should have anticipated it because they kind of put this in here. They had also asked me about broadening participation, but in terms of the public. That was another thing that, like, public engagement, I was totally unprepared for. But it was in the job ad. I should have been prepared for it. So you can kind of see what the questions that they are going to ask if the job ad is thorough. Let's look at another one. Okay, see if you can figure out if this is research or teaching or both. Okay, so about 30 more seconds. If you haven't decided, see if you want to take a stab at it. Okay. So the consensus that most of you think it's both, okay? I think a strong argument can be made for both or for research heavy. So if we look at all this stuff in red is all research. And this would indicate that what they really care most about is attracting a researcher who is going to raise the reputation of the institution. That there is so much time spent on that they would find that very persuasive. There is still a lot of teaching that is mentioned. And so this would indicate more of like, definitely have at least one substantial paragraph in the cover letter, if not maybe two. The weird thing is the statement of education and research philosophy. Now, I have absolutely no idea if this would be a joint statement. So we would do education, so like teaching and research together, or if they should be separate. This would be a time to reach out to the administrator, someone in the main office. They will get the answer for you. That is an absolutely appropriate question to ask. But that's bizarre. That is really strange. Okay, so I'm gonna blow past this humanities one. This is teaching, and you can see all teaching. Okay, so my humanities examples, I'm just gonna go through. Okay, if we were to look at this, we're not gonna read it, but I'll show you what you would wanna focus on here. So HCI, what we have in here in the red, this is research. Then we've got a little bit of teaching. Then we have a whole lot on the program itself. Now, what this would all indicate is that they keep coming back to interdisciplinarity, and that you need to make a strong case for how you would fit into the department. So that is what that is kind of telling me when I read that, that you can make a case, and you just have to make a strong case for interdisciplinary work. Okay, so to recap real quick, look for the relationship between research and teaching, and is there anything else that you need to put in there? This is going to show that you really read that thing appropriately and you are speaking their language, so to speak. You're going to cover the same type of information regardless of position, but it's all about amount of time and how you're going to tweak the message and organization. So you're going to talk about research, your teaching, and fit. So the organization and time is going to change. So if we look at something like the basic paragraphs, where we have the introduction, your current research, you might talk a little bit about teaching, and then you might have a paragraph on how you specifically would fit into the program before your conclusion. For a research-focused job, this would be like an R1. You'll start with your research, and then you'll have another paragraph on how you've disseminated knowledge, how you've already contributed to the field. That would be followed by future projects or publications. And this would indicate that you are not going to fall down in the 10-year timeline. You really are a researcher. That's what they care about. Your teaching paragraph, the point there is just to not sound like a terrible teacher, okay? So you just kind of have to like check a box there. And then fit and conclusion. For a mixed position where it's like, is it equal research, teaching, you can't quite figure out, then you have to make some decisions. Do you start with teaching or do you start with research? You know, if you start with research, then go to publications, and then go to, you know, maybe teaching or something like that. So you kind of have to decide, and your advisor might know the people on the committee or might know the school and what they're looking for. So your advisor is really going to be able to help you in that sense, to decide. But those ones are really tricky because you could just go either way. And yeah, it's stressful. For a teaching focused job, They want to make sure that you are a responsible teacher and you have the values of the discipline in mind when you're teaching. So you spend a lot of time talking about your teaching, very little time talking about your research. The only thing that you're really trying to do for your research paragraph is to show that you are an expert in the field. But they really want to see, are you going to be a teacher that students will want to take classes with? So, you know, avoid saying things like, oh, you know, when my students fail, that's how they learn, or something like that. We want to avoid sounding like we don't care. Research fellowships. This is where you would not include any teaching. You're there as a researcher. So everything is really on what your research is now and in the future. Whew, I went through that really quickly. If you have any questions, of course, you can unmute yourself or type it into the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and move forward. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and read A and B, and then decide which one you think is stronger. Okay, great. So most of you are saying B. That's great. I agree. B is better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through why B is better to make sure that you're all noticing the same things. Okay, so for A, it's not that A is bad, okay? But the problem with A is that we're going in different directions. So we have, I taught a variety of data analysis courses. Okay, so yeah, I can see that from your CV. All right, that's not the most compelling topic sentence. And if I were to read this a few minutes before an interview, that doesn't really give me a good sense of this person's capability as a teacher. And then the second sentence moves into their research, which is like it's like we've combined two different things here. So we're kind of trying to do too much. And then I also run this, this research and course. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? And now we have something about their teaching practice. And I think, okay, that's fine, but it doesn't seem to necessarily logically flow from these two sentences. And then I look forward to individual conferences with students, ascertaining their research direction and assisting in the composition of their theories and experiments. To me, that just seems like you enjoy teaching. It sounds like what they're saying, which I think is not necessarily the most helpful thing. I'm less interested in how people feel than their effectiveness as an instructor. And that sounds very mean. And I don't mean to suggest that I don't care about people's feelings, but I find that less persuasive than that they are actually effective as a teacher. Okay, for B, they're making an argument here, okay? And so I would assume from reading this that there is something in the job ad that mentions interdisciplinarity. They really want to get that term up there for someone to spot. And then I can see some of their effectiveness. So their students have kind of moved forward with their projects in interesting ways. So our objective is not to do like everything, like list everything out in the cover letter, but really to give well-chosen examples and then to explain why those things are important, or to help people understand how they relate to a bigger picture of about who you are. So we give enough detail that people can understand the relevancy. So a topic sentence, your first sentence of that paragraph should be, the main takeaway should be an argument. If someone's going to read that right before your interview, they're going to spot those topic sentences. Then you give enough evidence that people believe what you're saying, and then talk about why anyone should care about that. So we know from research that when people are reading, they remember what's in the topic sentences better, and their attention span actually falls off the longer they're reading a document. So let's say it's a research job, research focused job. You want to put your research stuff at the top because chances are really low that anyone's actually going to make it to the end, particularly on a first reading. So we want to have like lots of the most important information that they care about up at the top, because like their actual reading kind of takes a nosedive later on in the document. And topic sentences can really help make sure that they are spotting the right things there. Okay, we should avoid sentences that could be said by anyone, and I'll explain why in a second. But here are some of the most common ones. I consider it a remarkable honor and privilege. I'm passionate about. All of these things are just getting to feelings. I'm excited, okay? Again, people care more about effectiveness than someone's feelings. Something like, my research continues to amaze and delight me. Nobody is amazed and delighted by their research by the time that they get to the job market. You are worn down by your research. They will think you're disingenuous. So you're not fooling anyone. So we want to try and avoid seeming, you know, like we're putting on a face. Now, you obviously don't want to say like, my dissertation has worn me down. I can't deal with it anymore. But we just focus on how it's extending the field. We don't have to convince them that they should love it. This also kind of links to, if you are relying on any cliches or overused language, they're just going to roll their eyes because they're reading a stack of 200 or, you know, however many hundreds of applications, and you will like seem like everyone else. So these things, they waste time, they're not individual, and they don't help you make a specific case for why your work is a really good fit for that department. So we should try to avoid these kind of things when you're talking about why something is important or why you're a good fit. Okay. Go ahead and read these two and then see which one you think is better. Okay, I think, yep. Okay, great. So we have consensus again. Wow, this is amazing. All right, so most of you think B. I would love to know why you think B now. So you can either unmute yourself or you can type it into the chat. Why do you think B is better?
I don't like A particularly because I feel like it goes into a lot of unnecessary details that I don't need to know.
Yeah. So focus on details that are less, seem less relevant to you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Be better explains why this work is important and not just what the work is.
Yeah. Yeah. So why we should care is coming through much clearer in B. Yeah. And Kim, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize you had your hand up.
Oh, that's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like B is telling a story, whereas A is just listing a methodology.
Good. Yeah. Nobody cares about method if it's a results heavy, like if the focus is really on the results or something. Okay. Yeah, the focus on the method is probably less interesting, or the process is less interesting to the audience. Very good. There are a couple other things to note. So we've got kind of some like missed opportunities here. This line here, my dissertation is the first full-length study on this topic. I would assume that the dissertation is the first full-length study on this topic. That's kind of like the baseline, what a dissertation needs to do is the first full-length dissertation, or study on this particular thing. So they're trying to say it's unique, but what people really want to know is, how is this really extending the field? Why is this important? Okay, good. And you were absolutely right to note that B really emphasizes why we should care and how this is important. So even though B has way more detail, okay, none of the details are anything I cannot understand. They're emphasizing why this thing is in some way significant, and that is absolutely appropriate. So sometimes what we will see is we will either see writers go too vague, where you're not really getting the sense of why something is really all that interesting or complicated or important, or you will see things as way too narrowly focused. You have to hit the right balance. And the thing to know is, like, do we have enough detail to really understand why something is important? And have you articulated its significance in some way? So that's really kind of the gauge there. So show your contribution, be absolutely explicit about it. For STEM fields, it's much easier than for humanities. So thank goodness none of you are in the humanities, because it's a little tricky, and I can cut that part out of my talk. Okay, for some of you, you have publications, or you have grants that you've applied for, or you have gone to conferences. These are all ways, if you have all of them, go ahead and put them all in your cover letter. If you have only some of them, pop in the things that are the most appropriate. So totally fine for you to list these things out. And if it's something like conferences, choose the ones that are the most noteworthy. Same with if you have lots of funding, lots of awards, go with the ones that are the most persuasive. Okay, so we're going to, because we're running low on time, and I want to make sure we have enough time to answer all sorts of questions, I'm just going to walk you through this one. So example 3, okay, as a teacher, I seek to have my students be active participants, even in lectures, so that I can better tailor my materials to meet their needs. My introductory chemistry courses frequently have 150 students, which means that it can be difficult to engage each student in the daily discussion, or would not know until the unit test what materials students found clear or confusing. Now I build in frequent questions to which students respond using a clicker Students can check their understanding and receive immediate feedback. After implementing this approach, my students' test scores have increased by 20%, and students continually rate my classes highly, increasing from 3.8 out of 5 to 4.7 out of 5. What is great here is we have enough information that I can see the effectiveness of this teacher. So if I am reading a teaching paragraph, I want to see that they are responsive to their student needs and that they are effective, if they can somehow indicate effectiveness. For B, what we have here are, over the past 7 years, I've taught a variety of chemistry courses. I've taught a number of survey courses, as well as courses focused on specific theories and skills. I have extensive experience working with ESL students, as well as students with a variety of learning disabilities, including dyslexia, dysgraphia, and disabilities like ADD and ADHD. I pride myself on creating a classroom that accommodates the needs of students while promoting deep engagement with course materials and ideas. Some of my most satisfying experiences have come from helping struggling students grasp difficult concepts through conferences, class assignments, and activities, and small and large group discussions. I know I would thrive as a teacher in your college due to your belief in small classroom sizes and individualized support for students. So when I look at this, I do see a lot of detail, but I see a lot of unnecessary detail. There's no reason to list out all the different ways, all the disabilities that students have had that you have accommodated. It is enough to say that you have worked with students who have disabilities to adapt materials to accommodate them, if that was something that needed to be included. I also think that we have at the bottom here, we have, okay, I help students through conferences, class assignments, activities, small and large group discussions. I mean, that's basically like every teaching method. So I think that this does not make this person stand out as having done something or using methods that really seem to align even with the field and the field's values. So definitely it has some aspects where I think it's great to talk about working with students with disabilities, or to even mention one of these methods, but I think there's just way too much going on there. So when you're going to talk about your teaching, list a goal, what your goal is, then how you implement it, and some sort of assessment or evaluation. Remember, they're just looking for, that's okay. Remember, they're just looking to see, are you a competent instructor? And you don't want to raise any red flags. So enough information that they see you as competent given the field. So let's say, if in my field, lecturing is not typical. So if I talked about lecturing, that would kind of raise some red flags. But in other fields, lecturing for a class of 150 students is absolutely the norm. And it's fine to talk about that. So you kind of know what is appropriate for different fields and kind of lean on that. So I'm not going to go into this too much, but I can definitely answer some questions. You just want to start thinking about your teaching and what you might be able to tease out from your experiences. And you'll all have a range of amount of experiences. So these are some questions to get you started. If you don't have any teaching experience, you can talk about what you have witnessed from taking classes that you would want to implement as an instructor. That's perfectly appropriate. And you should also talk to the Eberly Center. I realize I have sped up significantly. So if you need me to slow down, you can just tell me to slow down. Or you can unmute yourself and ask me to repeat or whatever. I'm happy to do so. Okay, so fit is something that you will want to show either in a paragraph of its own right before the conclusion, or people will do it throughout, and it'll kind of be part of a significant portion of the paragraphs. So here is a standalone paragraph. I would particularly look forward to participating in the Humanities Center, as expanding public understanding about research in the humanities has been integral to my work as an X. I envision myself designing an undergraduate course, Humanities in a STEM World, which would engage students in this long-standing and timely debate. I'm familiar with the work of Foster and Doe and can envision collaborating with them on work related to the digital humanities. I'm also interested in the newly developed AI humanities collaboration. I would look forward to bringing a historical perspective on how people have traditionally interacted with emergent technology into these interdisciplinary conversations. So what you can see here is we have explicit discussion about how you can adapt. We also have ideas for what you would bring and how you would fit into what's already happening. So this is, so this is ideal, where we are helping them see how you would be as a fellow professional and peer. Because remember, when people are going to be looking at these things at the different stages, they're really going to try and figure out, what would the department look like with you in it? And how could they see you meeting a lot of their needs? And so this is a way for you to kind of make an argument so that they don't have to try and, imagine different ways. You kind of can tell what you would want to focus on. Okay, so I'm going to give you a link to a full letter. This is something that people have asked for in previous workshops. So boop, 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 boop. Link. And so since we have just a small group today, go ahead and click on that link I just sent in the chat. And then you can scroll all the way down to the full STEM letter. So it's on page, oh gosh, page 3. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. So we don't have any humanities people with us today. More's the pity. It's just me. So you can scroll all the way down to the full STEM letter. Now, rather than do breakout groups, since we have a small group, we can just discuss together. So this letter is online as a strong example. I think it is not a bad example, but I think it could be better. In particular, I don't think it is specific enough. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and read through it and see where are places that you would be more specific. And then we're just gonna have a conversation about it. So let's start with the first paragraph. Are there any places in the first paragraph that you would want to be more specific? And you can unmute yourself.
It feels like a fairly long introduction that just takes away attention from the main point. Doesn't really contribute a lot, and it's in the most important place.
Yeah, it has some of the key information that we need here, but yeah, I totally agree. It's not quite getting what it needs. It is missing something of importance. Yeah, good. So we know that we need to indicate the job. So what we're applying for. We don't need when the job is beginning, okay? So sometimes they'll have multiple positions that are open at once, but you don't need to state when it's gonna be beginning. You can indicate where it's listed, that's typical. So I don't need to, if you say you're a doctoral candidate and you expect to complete your PhD by whatever, that's just the same information, okay? So you can just say, I will defend my dissertation in May 2014, and I'm focusing on blah, 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 or whatever. Okay, so we kind of have repeated information here. And then I am extremely interested in obtaining a faculty position. Yeah, I would assume so because you're applying. Okay, so I'm being really harsh. I apologize. It's very late. I get snarky after about 3 p.m. So you don't have to state that you're really interested. What I'm more interested in, and I think that this would be more helpful, is to say, what are you focused on in your PhD? What do you study? I would assume that you have some sort of interesting focus area, and that's not coming through here. So that's really what should be there. And then we also have where I can contribute to its focus on engineering education and continue my research. So it's just like I want to teach and research and do other thing that's required of me, which doesn't seem like the most persuasive argument. I would instead either kind of make an argument about I can teach X, Y, and Z classes if it's a teaching focused job, or my research focus on blah, 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 if it's a research focused job. So those are my opinions about the first paragraph. Does anyone have questions about the first paragraph?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
So, like topic sentences, isn't the first paragraph supposed to be kind of a topic paragraph where maybe, just getting a little bit more details about these three things, so the engineering education, the research, and then the professional activities, and then develop them later?
So it's tricky. You can't add too much in here. So what you really can do is probably give more information on one of them. And I would say, like, really nobody is going to care. Like, you're not being hired to lead campus professional service activities. You're required because that's just extra things you have to do for your job. So even if they put in the job ad, like, oh, we want you to be part of whatever committees or something, like, you don't have a choice. That's just part of the job. But that's not really why they're hiring you. They're hiring you for your research or your teaching acumen or something like that. So you would really want to use this as a moment to make a strong case about how your research extends the field, or that you have a range of teaching experience, in which case I would pop one of those two up there. And sometimes you'll have like, my research on X, Y, and Z, or whatever, my research that extends blah, 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 will be defended in blah, 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 blah. So you might even have it kind of popped up in there in another sentence, and that would be acceptable as well. I hope that answered your question.
It does, thank you.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the second paragraph. Where would you be more specific in this second paragraph? Okay, someone highlighted, yes. Absolutely. Okay, where else? Or did you think this was a great paragraph? That's also fine for you to say.
So I like the fact that they mentioned the 6 years of experience working as an engineer, but then it wasn't mentioned anywhere else in the paragraph.
Yeah, yeah. It's surprising. The sentence makes us think that they're gonna at some point
Yeah.
reference it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if I were this person, I would have deleted that. I think this is a pretty good paragraph. I would love to have more of an indication about why this thing is important. Not just that it's been downloaded a lot. I mean, maybe that is like an indication, but I really kind of want to know more about why this thing is impressive. But I'm outside the field, so it's harder for me to know whether or not download numbers is a good measure. If anyone is in the field on like in this workshop, I would love to know. I just don't know. So for me, it didn't quite give enough detail to make me understand why this thing was so important. Okay, what about this paragraph? In addition to my dissertation research, how would you revise this? I guess I should say, what do you think the purpose of this paragraph is? Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Seems like it's supposed to be future work, but it's not very clear what the point is. It takes a while to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. Is it future work? Like, are they just trying to say like, look, I'm really interested in research, or I have like many irons in the fire, and therefore we'll keep producing. It's not 100% sure. Are they trying to get us to see range? Like my research is wide ranging, or something like, it's really hard to tell. But to me, I think that they're really missing the mark when we have this discussion of like my one study, and then I have another study. I also work on this. And then you can tell they've run out of steam. These are just a couple of projects I want to do. This is like they're trying to make a case for fit. Well, like why University of Texas? Why do that work there? And why are these other projects so important for the field? So let's pretend, you know, I don't know how big this department is in the University of Texas, but let's just pretend it's a small department. That would indicate that probably on that search committee are people who are not doing this type of research, or it might be someone in a secondary field. So I've been interviewed by committees where there's someone there from like history and I'm in English. There was one person who was a law professor. And I'm like, I don't know why you are here, okay? So depending on the size of the school, they will not know why any of this is important unless you tell them why it's important. And even if it is in a big school, they are reading at pace. They are flying through these things. So unless you really explain why something is important, even people in the field might not catch it. So like, you know, in English, nobody does what I do except for like a handful of other people. Unless I tell them why it's important, they're not going to catch it. So we really need to be explicit, spend the time there, talk about one project, or say like, in addition to studying X, I'm really focused in this way. Here's how I do that in one other project or something. Okay. All right. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this teaching paragraph. And we know the teaching paragraph is supposed to not raise red flags and help us see that they are somewhat competent. Are you getting that sense here? Does this person seem like they could be slotted into a class and be competent? Okay, Hillary, if you look up at the chat, let me give you the boop, boop, boop.
I think because I came in a few minutes late.
No, you're fine. So I just gave you I sent you the link. And if you scroll down to page 3, it says like full stem letter, and we are on the teaching paragraph. And
Great, thank you.
I highlighted it in some beautiful color. There we go, teal. So if you were on the search committee, would you think that this person could be slotted into the classroom and be successful? And go ahead and unmute yourself or type yes or no in the chat, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
It doesn't seem like this person has a lot of experience with teaching, so I guess no.
Yeah, okay, so what sentences are kind of indicating to you that they are really revealing they don't have experience?
They talk about research as their experience and something that would support their teaching, but it kind of reveals that they don't have. I think it would be better if they would talk about the experience they did have in the teaching, because they say that they did have experience.
Good, yeah, good. So they rely on these other experiences that they reference. There's also something else, okay? So when they say that these experiences have built their confidence and interest in teaching, that indicates to me that they have not really ever taught. Not to say that, like, you know, people who have taught are like, I have no confidence and no interest. It's not that case. But they're basically saying like, I feel like I could do a good job and I'm kind of interested in it. Right? Like that doesn't sound impressive. So we need detail of their experiences as a teaching assistant that would show that they are confident and interested. But it's kind of like, you know, if you say you're like, oh, I'm really interested in teaching, nobody believes you. You want to show that you have an interest in teaching from your experience. Okay, so this last one, and I'll just tell you kind of what should be in this last paragraph. We want to reinforce the main argument that they're going to care about. Is it teaching focused? Is it research? Whatever. Make that case. State what else you've sent along to them, and that's just standard genre. And then you don't have to say like, let me know if you want anything else, I'll supply it. They know the job market, you'll do anything. So we don't have to kind of like list it out. It is also typical to include your contact information, even though it is at the top of the letter, it is still typical to include it at the bottom, because people, they'll put it in all different places. So if you can include it in some other place, that's helpful as well. So reinforce that main point. That's like the number one thing. They just don't have a fit paragraph. They're not showing a really good alignment with the specific university. And that's a real missed opportunity here. In terms of length, we interviewed faculty from a variety of disciplines at CMU. And they said that 1 to 2 pages is totally appropriate. In some fields, 2 pages is standard, whereas in others, a 1 page is not a problem. So 1 to 2 pages is totally appropriate to kind of shoot for. And so if you were worried about length at all. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to, okay, so you don't have to worry about that Google Doc anymore. While I'm pulling up my presentation though, again, to show you my last little bit, do you have any questions about that letter? And if you do, feel free to unmute yourself or type it into the chat.
So I'm still not super clear on what the intro paragraph should convey, besides like saying this is me and my research is on this.
Yes. Okay. So I have a list. Boop, 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 boop. Let me pull that up. And I will send this to you all after the workshop. Let me see. There it is. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so slow with Zoom stuff. When you're presenting, everything gets moved around. Okay. So can you see this handout that I'm showing right now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So we would expect the position, where it was posted, and then where your PhD is from, what field, and when it will be defended. Now, some jobs, they will not interview you unless you will defend by like June or something. You don't always know, but you want to indicate on there, like I will be defending spring of 2020 or May of whatever you put there. You just need to make sure you double check with your committee that they are not saying something different. So if you are no longer in graduate school, this doesn't apply for you all, but you would still have to have, I received my degree in X from Carnegie Mellon University in whatever year, and I'm currently associate pro, blah, 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 blah. So you might have to, you'd have that extra thing there. And then if it's a research focused job, explain your research. If it's a teaching focused job, what do you specialize in teaching, or are you prepared to teach, X, Y, and Z classes? That's the typical introduction there. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Very, very useful. Cool.
I will send this list out to you, and then you can kind of just use it as a checklist. Okay. So last things, you want to make the document look professional. So what this means is use institutional letterhead. Your department should have letterhead as like a PDF that you can like grab that image and plop it on the top of your Word document. Include the date that you are writing or submitting the letter. Just make sure you update it before you send the thing. And then the recipient's address. If you can have it, you'll just have to do some internet stalking to get that specific address. The recipient name, if there's no lead on the search committee, like if they don't say who the head of the search committee is, you can just put Dear Search Committee. That's completely fine. And then we really want to have spaces. Now, it takes up room, but this is typical for a business letter format. Similarly, we want 11 to 12 point font with something that's professional, Times New Roman, whatever, and 1-inch margins. Now, if you leave out these spaces, or your text is much smaller than 11 point font, or you have smaller margins than 1 inch, they will smell the desperation coming off the letter. So we want to avoid seeming desperate as much as possible when we're writing these letters. And so having the right space, it makes it seem as if we are professionals, that we kind of know the game that we're playing. And the letter will not seem as like dense of a text that they don't actually want to read. So the more we can kind of like adhere to these genre standards, the more likely it is that they're gonna read it and see you as a potential peer and coworker. So if you're having trouble, you're like, oh no, I don't know what to do. I'm still at 3 pages and maybe I should just make my margin smaller. No, you got to start cutting things. You have to make hard decisions. And it's really unfortunate because you can't include everything. But if you include everything, then nothing is bubbling to the top and they will not be able to quickly skim and read it. So we really want to make sure that you highlight the right things. And then, of course, start writing now, because you will probably write many versions of this and then tailor it for every job. So the more you can kind of have like you feel really good about a set of paragraphs and then you're just kind of tweaking those paragraphs, or you might have to slot in an additional teaching paragraph or an additional research paragraph. You're kind of ready to go to deploy those, because some jobs will open up in August and close by the end of August or something like that. So you'll kind of be ready for those when they come along. Okay, so random questions for me. Things that you've heard, whatever that's on your mind.
So I have a question about how specific this is to the US job market. So I'm looking at places in Europe, for example.
Yeah. So I know that the process is way different in Europe. So for example, for like British interviews, like you'll all interview at the same like time, and like you go and you're all sitting and you're like you're all with each other, you know who's there kind of. So I would say for the letters, you'd have to talk to your committee about that. I would not know if those things are going to be that far off or what the differences are going to be. I will say that your topic sentences should absolutely be spot on, okay? And then your contribution to your field needs to be extra clear. Those things I would anticipate being the exact same. But in terms of, gosh, how much time to spend on different things, information, I wouldn't know. Or length of letter.
Yeah, do you know of like any resources about that? I kind of know a lot more about the US market and I don't even know where to look.
Yeah.
Like every country is so different in Europe that you'll have to talk to someone who's there, because I've been applying to like different places in Europe and the standards are so different. And even like different universities within the same country are starting to follow like tenure track US style versus like old traditional European style, and so it also varies per institution.
Yeah, so your advisor should know at least oh God, my advisor only knew a tiny bit. I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm sorry. Yeah. I just worked with someone on an application for Israel, a university in Israel, and it was wild. It was really strange. Some of the things overlapped, but some of the stuff it was really weird, the process. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So other questions about the cover letter or even about these other documents you'll have to produce?
Yeah, because I got disconnected because my internet connection thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so I wonder why join later when we talk about the cover letter example. You talk about we need to be specific about their examples, about our skills. So how specific we should be and how to present those examples. Do we have any like good cover letter that we can look at to see what they are writing?
So in terms of good cover letters for your field, I would ask your advisor. Your department should have some that you can look at. That would be the best bet in terms of kind of what is typical in your field. I would hesitate to suggest, because I have some that are good in English, but that's not your field, so it's more challenging there to see a crossover. So ask your advisor first for what they think is what are good examples. In terms of being specific, what I think you first need to ask yourself is, when you read an article in your field, do people care more about the methods or do people care more about the results? So for example, let's say you are in chemistry. People care mostly about the results in chemistry, to the point that usually the methods are like the last thing even in the article, because nobody cares about that. You're just like tweaking a method, and we really care about the results. But something like robotics, we care about the method. How did you build this robot? So first, identify the newsworthy item in your field. That is what you want to spend the most amount of time explaining, so people actually see why it's important. And that's where we normally see people have a misfire. They spend way too much time talking about something nobody cares about. And then they're just like, yeah, this is really important this way. We're like, what? So spend your time explaining the component that people in your field are going to find to be the most newsworthy thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. Because maybe I'm thinking about, for example, in the cover letter, they talk about teaching experience. Maybe a story about how they help students learn something, or what specific workshop he organized for that class. I just think about these examples, but I don't know if it's most appropriate one or not.
Yeah, teaching, what you want to think about is, what does your field value in terms of teaching? Is it developing a scientific mindset? Is it critical thinking? Is it developing certain skills? Okay. And then that you identified a student need and you did something to meet that need.
Right. Yeah,
and even if, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just find the problem and the needs and to what we have done to fulfill the needs.
Yeah. And what they want to see is that you're thoughtful about your teaching. So we've all experienced teachers who are terrible, and they are not adapting to their students. So at the very minimum, you kind of want to see that they want to see like okay, you can adapt in ways that are appropriate to your field. And so if you can talk about a student need or an objective, that the committee would be like, oh yeah, that's an objective that intro to chemistry students would need to achieve. And then you did this thing. That makes sense. But it doesn't have to be that you're reinventing the wheel or something, but that you had an impact, or that they can see you're thinking about teaching. So I would say start with what you think of our values from the field. What have you done? And did you see were students asking the right types of questions? Could you see them, like their learning was better? Or did you poll them? And then what did they suggest or something like that? Sometimes people even talk about things that didn't work, but then they say, here's how I would change it going forward. So I tried this thing, it didn't work, or I noticed X, Y, and Z, and moving forward, this is what I will do in the future. And that just shows that they're a responsible teacher, really critical in terms of their approach. And that is also beneficial. So there's a lot of ways you can approach it. We just need enough information there to see, like, okay, yeah, this person thinks about teaching and is responsive. Okay, other questions for me? Okay, so as you're writing, because some of this is it's trial and error to some extent, which is really frustrating. And how much detail you spend talking about your dissertation for a Research 1 job is going to be different than how much time you spend talking about it for a liberal arts teaching focused position. And so you kind of have to try things out. Kim, you said you're on the job market now, so you probably are feeling this, like you're kind of like, it's always adapting these things and making different decisions. So think about making an appointment with the GCC. We have a lot of tutors who are like me, who have their PhD and have been on the job market, and can kind of help you figure out how to make really strong case for your work concisely, so that you open up space to be able to talk about other important things in your document. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and end the workshop now. Thank you so much for your time. And then I will send the recording and everything else along to you tomorrow. So good luck and enjoy the rest of your spring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.